Alright guys, the moment I've been dreading. The last chapter of book Scavenger. You guys know how sad I get at the end of books. And this one I'm especially sad because I especially loved this book. I think we'll get through it together. However, I am really excited to see what Emily and James and Matthew's surprise is from Mr. Griswold. Knowing Mr. Griswold, it's fantastic. But let's see what it is in chapter 42. Let's go. Emily lay on her bed finishing a book James had lent her called Rhyme Schemer. They planned to hide it at Pier 39 that evening when they went with her family to the lighted boat parade. There was a knock on her door and her dad opened it, letting the sounds of the Flush holiday album Matthew had been making the family listen to on repeat since Thanksgiving. "A package for you," her dad said, raising a medium-sized cardboard box he balanced on one hand. Emily jumped up and grabbed it. The Bayside Press logo was stamped at the top. "They're here," she squealed. Mr. Griswold had said he was sending her advanced copies of the new Poe novel. His final prize to her, James, and Matthew would be inside the book. "I have to tell James!" She put the box down and raced to her window. A colorful strand of holiday bulbs dangled around her window, reflecting off the rain-flecked glass. She moved the antlers, the gold bug, and the raven box from the windowsill to the floor before sliding the window up and reaching for the pulley rope, now slick with rain. Her dad chuckled and left, letting the door close behind him. Once the bucket was at her level, she grabbed her notebook and scratched out a message. Here's the message. I'll just show it to you. This jumble of words, and then the translation of that is, "Books are here, come over." The next 15 minutes seemed like the longest minutes ever as she waited for James to come down. She finished Rhyme Schemer and then paced her room until he poked his head in. "Finally!" Emily clapped her hands. James held up a thin paper bag with a logo on it for sourdough bread. I thought of a good book stew," he said. "The clue can be something about lost bread or a book that wants to be edible." He snapped his fingers, an idea occurring to him. "We'll make up the clue using altered poetry, like the character does in Rhyme Schemer." Emily grinned. Yes, brilliant. "But first, look!" She dragged a ballpoint pen across the tape ceiling. The Bayside press box. The flaps popped open to reveal paperback books of The Cathedral Murders, a posthumous novel by Edgar Allan Poe. They weren't the final books, but Jack had said these advanced copies would be like a dress rehearsal before the official performance. And there's the book. Looks like pretty exciting stuff. Emily removed a copy and squeezed it between her hands, breathing in the paper smell. She flipped through the pages, wondering if the last prize would be another hidden puzzle. But it wasn't. It was a special mention in the introduction of the book. One fall day, Emily Crane and James Lee, two San Francisco middle school students, found what they thought was an innocent copy of Edgar Allan Poe's Poe book abandoned in a BART station. Little did they know that this book, a reprinting of Poe's short story, The Gold Bug, would lead them on a wild scavenger hunt across San Francisco, culminating in the discovery of the manuscript for the very novel you now hold in your hands. The introduction went on to tell the story of Mr. Griswold's plan for his game and how Emily and James unraveled all the clues. "I can't believe it! We're in a book!" Emily exclaimed. "We're famous book hunters," James said. They spent a few minutes looking through their copies of the new Poe book until Matthew poked his head in. His lopsided mohawk had been shaved away, leaving a short, stubbly hair everywhere except for his long bangs. "Dad said the books are here?" Emily held one out to him. "Page 5, she said. After skimming the introduction, Matthew said, "There's nothing in here about my awesome kung fu moves to stop Mr. Remora." "That's because that only happened in your dreams," Emily said. "Oh, right." Matthew flicked his bangs out of his eye and smiled. "But you get a mention for the Maltese Falcon clue and, of course, Portsmouth Square." Matthew pointed to the bread bag on the floor. "What's the bread for?" he asked. James slid Rhyme Schemer inside the bag. "It's a book stew." Matthew made a face and shook his head. No. If you're going to dress up a book like a sourdough loaf, you need to make it more convincing than that. Hold on." Matthew left the room and James turned the wrapped book this way and that. "I guess it does just look like a book in a paper bag." When Matthew came back, he carried a roll of toilet paper and sheets of newspaper. He crumpled a sheet of newspaper with one hand and gestured for the book. "You put the paper on top to add bulk, like a real sourdough loaf. Now," he nodded to the roll of toilet paper, "mummify them together so they stay in place." James wound toilet paper around the book as Matthew held it and the balled up paper in place. Emily opened the sourdough bag to check for size. Squash it down more so it will fit, she said. Emily smiled at the heads of her brother and James, bent together in concentration. When they finished stuffing the bread, Emily held up the concealed book, twisting it to view from all angles. "Now that's a book stew," Matthew said. From the hallway, Emily's mom called, "Time to head out, everybody." Let's go hide it," James said. "You ready, Em?" "I'm ready." And she was. She was ready to lean into their next adventure. That is the end of Book Scavenger. So now they're famous because of that. Now everyone who reads that Edgar Allan Poe book, which a lot of people read Edgar Allan Poe, are going to know all about James and Emily and Matthew. So that was really exciting, as always. I'm so sad that it's over. But I hope you guys enjoyed it because I seriously did. What a highlight of all of my days reading this book to you guys. So hopefully I will see you next time for my next Read Aloud. All right, bye!